For months, Trump has leaned on one argument to justify crushing tariffs on Canadian goods: fentanyl. He's painted Canada as the culprit fueling America's opioid crisis, using that narrative to push tariffs as high as 35%. But Canada isn't just defending itself anymore. In Washington this week, it went on the offensive. And what happened during those meetings could mark the turning point in a trade war that has left businesses, workers, and consumers on edge. The story begins with Canada's Trade Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, who flew into Washington for high-stakes talks. That morning, he met with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnik. What was supposed to be a standard one-hour meeting stretched into a 90-minute discussion described by both sides as productive. LeBlanc even posted a photo online, signaling optimism that Canada and the United States could find common ground. But the real drama unfolded later in the day when another Canadian delegation entered the Justice Department. This wasn't trade talk. This was about fentanyl. Justice Minister Shana Fraser, Public Safety Minister Anand Sangari, and Canada's newly appointed fentanyl czar Kevin Brusso met directly with U.S. Attorney General Bondi. What makes this meeting so unusual is that it wasn't just a courtesy visit. Canadian officials and the U.S. Attorney General exchanged personal phone numbers, an intimate gesture in the world of diplomacy. It meant one thing: both sides were preparing for ongoing direct cooperation. For months, Trump has hammered away at Canada, claiming it has failed to stop fentanyl smuggling into the United States. In July, he raised tariffs on Canadian goods from 25% to 35%, declaring that Canada's inaction was fueling an American national emergency. He has repeatedly tied trade tariffs to drug trafficking, saying Canada would face penalties until fentanyl stopped crossing the northern border. But the facts simply don't support Trump's story. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said publicly that smuggling from Canada accounts for less than 1% of America's fentanyl supply. The data confirms it. In 2024, U.S. authorities seized just 43 pounds of fentanyl at the northern border. At the southern border with Mexico, they seized more than 21,000 pounds. That's a ratio of nearly 500 to 1. In other words, Trump's entire fentanyl narrative is based on a sliver of the problem. Almost 97% of fentanyl seizures happen at the U.S.-Mexico border, not in Canada. Yet Trump continues to use Canada as a political punching bag. What's more, the fentanyl crisis itself is improving. So why keep blaming Canada? The answer lies in leverage. Trump has made no secret of his strategy. Tariffs aren't just about economics, they're about power. He has said openly that Canada will face tariffs of 25% on all goods until fentanyl and illegal immigration are stopped. But this week's developments in Washington show that Canada isn't playing defense anymore. By sending high-level officials, including its dedicated fentanyl czar, to meet directly with the U.S. Attorney General, Canada is separating fact from fiction. It's saying, if the problem is fentanyl, let's deal with fentanyl. And if tariffs are really about trade, let's talk trade. By splitting the two issues, Canada has exposed Trump's political strategy for what it is, using a public health crisis as a trade weapon. The Americans seem to know it too. Sources say the U.S. Justice Department itself requested the meeting with Canadian officials. That's significant. If Washington is asking Canada to cooperate on fentanyl, it suggests that serious policymakers in Trump's own administration no longer buy the idea that tariffs can be justified by drug smuggling statistics. Canada isn't just showing up to meetings with talking points. It's backing up its arguments with action. Trudeau's government has invested $1.3 billion in border security, rolling out helicopters, drones, scanners, surveillance tools, and K-9 units specifically to detect fentanyl. It has appointed Kevin Brusso as the first-ever Canadian fentanyl czar, tasked with coordinating cross-border efforts to fight opioid smuggling. At the same time, Canada is preparing criminal justice reforms, including bail reform, sentencing updates, and new laws to address gender-based violence that it hopes will show the U.S. it is serious about tackling crime. These are not token gestures. They are major domestic policy shifts designed to prove that Canada is not just a reliable trading partner, but also a committed security partner. The Canadian delegation even offered condolences for a recent mass shooting in Minnesota, a subtle reminder that America's greatest public safety threat comes from within its borders, not from across them. While Trump continues to push tariffs, the costs are mounting at home. American consumers are paying more for cars, steel, aluminum, and even groceries as supply chains adjust to higher duties. Canada has retaliated with $155 billion in tariffs on U.S. goods, while Mexico and China have slapped their own tariffs on American exports. Economists warn that Trump's strategy risks destabilizing global markets. What began as a supposed fight against fentanyl has morphed into a broader trade war, leaving businesses uncertain and consumers frustrated. Even Trump himself seems conflicted. In a recent phone call with Trudeau, he hinted at wanting to be very good with Canada. The Prime Minister, meanwhile, told Canadians that sometimes no deal is the best deal, even while dropping some retaliatory tariffs to restart negotiations. Canadian officials have taken to describing the trade talks with a hockey analogy. At the start of a game, you go into the corners hard, elbows up, even drop the gloves to send a message. That's what Canada did with its retaliatory tariffs. But later in the game, you need to finesse the puck, pass smartly, and score. That's where Canada is now, moving from confrontation to strategy, from defense to offense. It's a clever metaphor, but it captures the reality. Canada knows it has leverage. The U.S. relies heavily on Canadian goods, services, and resources. A country that supplies so much to America, from lumber to copper to water, cannot be dismissed as a minor player. The Washington meetings this week are just the beginning. By coordinating two separate tracks, trade talks led by LeBlanc and fentanyl discussions led by Fraser, Sangari, and Brusso, Canada is dismantling Trump's narrative piece by piece. The fact that the U.S. Justice Department requested the fentanyl talks is perhaps the clearest sign yet that Trump's justification for tariffs is unraveling. If fentanyl seizures from Canada are negligible, if overdose deaths are falling, and if Canada is spending billions to strengthen its border, then the logic of punitive tariffs collapses. Canada's approach has been nothing short of masterful. Rather than escalating a tit-for-tat tariff war, it has chosen facts over fiction, strategy over emotion. By investing in border security, demonstrating real reforms, and engaging U.S. officials at the highest levels, it has shown that it takes America's concerns seriously, even as it exposes the weakness of Trump's argument. The result? Canada has successfully shifted the conversation. No longer is it on the defensive against Trump's blame game. It is setting the agenda, showing U.S. officials what real cooperation looks like, and forcing Washington to separate trade from drug policy. The meeting with Attorney General Pam Bondi may have lasted only 45 minutes, but its impact could reverberate for months. It marked the moment Canada stopped playing defense and went on the offensive. Trump's fentanyl narrative is crumbling under the weight of facts. His tariffs are backfiring, raising costs for American families and straining alliances with Canada, Mexico, and China. Meanwhile, Canada has emerged as the calm, calculated player in this geopolitical chess match. The bigger question now is whether Trump will pivot, acknowledging that cooperation is more effective than confrontation, or whether he will double down on a strategy already undermined by his own administration's data. What is clear is that Canada has found its footing. By combining diplomacy, facts, and strategy, it has turned a one-sided blame game into a two-way negotiation, and in doing so, it may have changed the course of the Canada-U.S. trade war forever.